These are 9 Appalachian clans whose very existence defied what most people consider possible. From families with blue skin that looked like something out of a fairy tale, to snake handlers who drank poison and lived, these mountain communities didn't just preserve old traditions, they lived in ways that seemed to bend the rules of reality itself. Deep in the hollows of Appalachia, where morning mist clings to ancient mountains and modern life moves a little slower, certain families have maintained ways of living that challenge our understanding of what's real and what's possible. These aren't just ghost stories or mountain legends. These are documented cases of clans and communities whose practices, genetics, and beliefs created their own versions of reality. The most visually striking clan has to be the Blue Fugates of Troublesome Creek, Kentucky. In 1820, a French orphan named Martin Fugate settled near Hazard, Kentucky, and married Elizabeth Smith. Neither of them knew they both carried a recessive gene for methemoglobinemia, a condition that would turn their descendants' skin a striking shade of blue. For over a century and a half, the Blue Fugates lived in the hills of eastern Kentucky, some with skin described as being as blue as Lake Louise. Nurse Ruth Pendergrass, who worked in the area, recalled that they looked like anybody else, except they had the blue color. The isolation of Troublesome Creek meant that the Fugate descendants often married within their extended family, which concentrated the recessive gene and produced more blue children. Dr. Madison Keween heard about the blue people in the 1960s and traveled to Kentucky to study them. He discovered that the Fugates' blood had reduced levels of the enzyme diaphorus, which caused their blood to be a brownish color rather than red, giving their skin its blue tint. The condition was treatable with simple methylene blue injections, but by then, the Blue Fugates had lived for generations as living proof that human beings could be colors we never imagined. The last documented blue-skinned Fugate was born in 1975. But if the Blue Fugates twisted biological reality, the snake-handling families of Appalachia challenged death itself. In 1909, George Went Hensley read Mark chapter 16, verse 18, "They shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them," and decided to take it literally. He caught a rattlesnake, brought it to church, and handled it without being bitten. And that's how a tradition began that continues to this day, despite numerous deaths. The Hensley family and their spiritual descendants didn't just handle venomous snakes like copperheads, rattlesnakes, and water moccasins. They drank strychnine and other poisons. They handled fire. Pastor Jamie Coots, before his death from a rattlesnake bite in 2014, said that serpent handling was his life, that it was God's commandment. What makes this practice truly reality-bending isn't just the danger, it's the survival rate. Media attention focuses on the deaths, but what gets overlooked is how many times these handlers have been bitten and survived without medical treatment, or consumed poison and walked away. In 2020, approximately 125 snake-handling churches remained active across Appalachia. These congregations exist in a space where faith and biology collide, where belief seems to offer some protection against venom and toxins, though clearly not absolute protection. Then there are the Melungeons, a triracial group whose very identity defied the racial categories that dominated American society. Today, over 200,000 Americans claim Melungeon ancestry. These families lived for generations in the mountains of Tennessee, Virginia, and Kentucky, claiming Portuguese or Turkish ancestry to avoid the discrimination that came with being classified as Black or Native American. The Melungeon families, led by matriarchs like Mahala Mullins, weren't just ethnically ambiguous. They maintained traditions that seemed to pull from multiple realities. They practiced folk magic that combined European, African, and Native American elements. They had their own herbal medicines, their own stories of origin, and their own ways of understanding the world. Dr. Brent Kennedy called them a mystery people, and recent DNA studies have only deepened the mystery, showing a mix of ancestries that confirms their unique position outside conventional racial categories. No Appalachian story demonstrates reality gone wrong, quite like the Bell Witch haunting that terrorized the Bell family of Tennessee from 1817 to 1821. John Bell and his family endured phenomena witnessed by hundreds of people, including allegedly President Andrew Jackson himself. The entity, which claimed to be the witch of a neighbor woman named Kate Batts, didn't just make noises or move objects. It engaged in conversations, demonstrated knowledge of distant events, and ultimately became credited as the only documented case in American history of a spirit causing a death when John Bell died in 1820. What makes the Bell Witch case so compelling is the sheer number of witnesses and the physical effects. This wasn't a ghost that appeared to one or two family members. This was a force that interacted with entire communities, that left physical marks, that demonstrated intelligence and purpose. The Bell family didn't just experience a haunting, they lived in a reality where the supernatural had tangible, deadly effects. In the remote corners of Appalachia, some families claim descent from the Moon-Eyed People, a pre-Columbian race described in Cherokee legends as having pale skin and large eyes that saw better at night than in daylight. According to the stories, these weren't Native Americans, but an earlier people who built the ancient stone structures found throughout Appalachia before the Cherokee drove them out. Families claiming this heritage often point to unusual traits, extreme light sensitivity, exceptional night vision, or other characteristics that set them apart. Whether genetic memory, cultural mythology, or something else entirely, these families maintain an identity that connects them to a version of American prehistory that doesn't fit conventional archaeological narratives. Throughout Appalachia, the tradition of granny witches represents another form of reality bending that's been passed down through maternal lines for centuries. These weren't witches in the Halloween sense. They were Christian women who practiced folk magic, combining Bible verses with European folk traditions to heal, protect, and sometimes curse. A granny witch who asked that her name be withheld explained that they don't put spells on people, they take them off. These women could talk the fire out of burns, stop blood with a Bible verse, remove warts with a ritual, and divine the future with playing cards. The granny witch families maintained knowledge that seemed to work, not always, not perfectly, but often enough that people sought them out for generations. They lived in a reality where words had power, where the right combination of faith and folk knowledge could change physical conditions. The water-dowsing clans of Appalachia represent the most scientifically challenging of all these traditions. Families like the Mullins Dowsers of Virginia have passed down the ability to find water with forked sticks for generations. What makes this particularly interesting is that it often works. Well drillers across Appalachia routinely employed dowsers before expensive drilling operations. Science says it shouldn't work. Controlled studies show that dowsing performs no better than chance. Yet in Appalachia, certain families have built reputations over centuries for being able to find not just water, but minerals, lost objects, and even bodies. These dowsing clans exist in a space where empirical science and empirical experience refuse to align. The families who survived the Shelton Laurel Massacre of 1863 developed their own form of reality twisting through trauma and isolation. After 13 men and boys were executed by Confederate soldiers in Madison County, North Carolina, the surviving families retreated into an insularity so complete that they maintained blood feuds for generations and created alternative historical narratives that differed significantly from official records. These families didn't just remember differently, they lived differently, maintaining a parallel society with its own laws, its own justice, and its own version of historical truth. The massacre created a wound in reality itself, a pocket of Appalachia where time moved differently and outside law held no sway. The Fairview Pentecostal Holiness congregations took reality bending in yet another direction, combining snake handling with speaking in tongues, faith healing, and fire handling. These families didn't just attend church. They entered altered states of consciousness where they spoke languages they didn't know, handled flames without burning, and reported miraculous healings that defied medical explanation. What unites all 9 of these clans isn't just their unusual practices or beliefs. It's their complete commitment to living in realities that differed from mainstream American life. The Blue Fugates didn't see their color as a medical condition to be fixed. It was simply who they were. The snake handlers don't see what they do as testing God. They see it as obeying Him. The Melungeons didn't just claim different ancestry, they lived it, creating a cultural identity that transcended racial categories. These families thrived in isolation, in the deep hollows and high ridges where the modern world arrived late, if at all. In these pockets of separation, reality became malleable. Whether through genetic drift, religious ecstasy, folk tradition, or collective trauma, these clans created and maintained ways of being that shouldn't have been possible. Today, in an age of DNA tests and scientific explanations, some of these traditions are fading. The Blue Fugates can be treated with a simple injection. Young Melungeons can discover their exact genetic heritage with a cheek swab. Snake-handling churches face legal challenges and declining membership. But something is lost in the explaining away. These families proved that reality isn't as fixed as we might think. Social media has brought new attention to these traditions. Young Appalachians share granny witch wisdom on TikTok, garnering millions of views. University researchers study the psychological effects of snake handling. Tourists come seeking the mysterious and supernatural. But tourism and academic study can't capture what it was like to live in these alternate realities, to wake up blue, to hold death in your hands and survive, to know your great-grandmother could stop blood with a Bible verse. The 9 clans who twisted reality in Appalachia remind us that human experience is broader and stranger than we often acknowledge. In a world that increasingly demands conformity and scientific rationalism, these families maintained ways of life that defied both. They didn't just preserve old traditions. They lived in worlds where the impossible became everyday, where faith could overcome biology, where identity transcended conventional categories. As the last of the old-timers pass away and the mountains open up to the modern world, we're left with a question. Were these families deluded, living in ignorance and isolation? Or did they access something the rest of us have lost? A flexibility of experience, a permeability between the possible and impossible that allowed them to live fuller, stranger, more miraculous lives? The answer might not matter as much as the asking. These 9 clans prove that reality is more negotiable than we think, that human beings can adapt to and create ways of living that seem to violate natural law. In the morning mist of Appalachia, where the mountains hold secrets older than memory, anything might be possible. And maybe it always was.